Hey guys, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast and the Boss Money Talk series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and I am so excited to be back with special guest co-host Danielle Famble. Danielle,
Hey,
yay!
hey, glad to be back.
Danielle, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
And you've been traveling.
I have been traveling.
Me too.
I just got back from the JMC Euro retreat in Dublin, which was amazing. I went a couple days early to go shopping and
Yeah.
had a really great time. Speaking of shopping, I really like your shirt.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I really resonated with this shirt. I also happened to be traveling in Europe and happened to go back to Amsterdam, which I absolutely love that town. And I saw this in the store, no sacrifice, no success. And it just had all these really positive, like motivating messages on it. And I said, wow, I just really resonate with that. And I must have it. And so I bought it and I wanted to wear it today. And I think there's a message for all of us bosses.
Yeah.
No sacrifice, no success. Let's talk about sacrificing and as it relates to, the Money Talk series and financials.
Yeah, no, that's a huge part of financial success is sacrificing. Sacrificing for your business, sacrificing the short term for your financial goals that are probably long term. That's a huge part of it. And I think that on the other side of that sacrifice, as your shirt says, there is some level of success because you need to be able to delay gratification sometimes to be able to get to success in what you're hoping to achieve in life.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you bring up. Delaying gratification. You're absolutely right. Like, I want this and I want it now because I feel like it's that kind of I feel like we're in that kind of culture these days where things are coming at us fast and we want things fast. And a lot of times success does not come fast. And so we need to kind of step it through. I was actually talking to one of my students the other day, and about the steps I took to ultimately achieve my overnight success, which, as I've said before on the podcast, took how many years? I mean,
Exactly.
took close to 10 years for that quote unquote overnight success. But, and it took a lot of sacrifices and not just financial. I mean, I know that, this is the money talks, but, financial can also mean your time because your time is in essence money, especially when you're talking about your business.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when you're talking about your business, there are so many, there's parts of it that you just need to sort of stair step up. So you're probably front loading a lot of the education in the very beginning.
Yes.
And that's a lot of time. And it could be a lot of money, but it's mostly time intensive. And then from there, then you can kind of take what you've been learning in that education phase and then implement it. But if you want to go from new to pro and you want it to happen quickly, if you try to go for like speed, you're going to be missing some things along the way. So the sacrifice is probably going to be sacrificing your time. It's probably going to be sacrificing your money, and it's going to be making some difficult decisions. I mean, even with our business, when I first started, I wanted a really expensive booth. I wanted the booth that I saw everybody else had on Zoom. And at that time, I did not have that booth money. I just didn't. My business was not bringing in that much income. And instead of just going after what it is that I wanted immediately, I chose to stair step it. And I chose to sacrifice what I wanted at that moment for the greater good of spending the money on coaching and spending the money on demos and things like that. And through that, for me, success has come and I can afford that booth at some point. But now my goals have changed and the booth is not really the main thing that I'm wanting now. I'm wanting, more education, maybe buying different mics or computers or peripherals to bring into the booth. So once you delay that, then you can kind of give yourself the time to recalibrate and readjust in your business.
Yeah, I love that you talked about like you're evolving, like because it does. You stair step it, but then your goals change. And
Yeah.
so even myself, I mean, it's always, I think, an ever growing, especially if you want to grow your business, because I find myself, I'm looking to diversify and to get into other things. As everybody knows, I'm like a serial entrepreneur, but I like getting into other aspects of the voiceover business or other genres. And so I've been actually spending a lot of time, of which I don't have a ton, studying and educating myself and taking classes. And it was funny because like last weekend, I wasn't recording a VO Boss episode, which is really odd for me because typically I do that on Saturdays. But I found myself spending the entire day learning a new software so that I could see what were the capabilities, how could I implement this in the next step of growing my business, and that required me to sacrifice my entire Saturday and of course my happy hour. And everybody's like, "You work so much," but I'm like, honestly, I really believe that doing the work now and getting the education and doing it during the times when I have available the growth, I think it's going to really benefit me to keep my business going and to keep myself in business, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. It is ever evolving, and it is up to each individual VO boss to look at where they are now, reestablish their goals, and then commit to what they're going to do to get to those goals, and figure out what sacrifices they're willing to make to get to those goals. That's kind of the part of building and growing your business and scaling the business, is that you're probably going to be making a lot of turns along the way. And are you okay with that? And are you okay with the sacrifices that you're going to need to make in order to achieve those goals? So for you, last week, it was a sacrifice of time, but that time sacrifice is going to reap huge dividends later on when you know how to use that software. So really, was the time sacrifice like that much of a sacrifice for you?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
is it something that was really just an investment into your future?
It was really, and interestingly enough, it was an investment into software, which I don't anticipate doing myself. So it's doing, I was looking into a new video editing software so I can create more content to get out, right? So that I can, again, like get my brand out there. And so will I, ultimately be spending all my time creating, or editing videos? No, ultimately I'm going to be, hiring somebody to direct them. But I want to know enough about this software to be able to intelligently direct them. And I think also it's something to mention that, like you spoke about in the very beginning, we have to take sacrifices and maybe not get everything that we want immediately, and sacrifice maybe our ultimate goal, I think, in voiceover is let's do something that brings us joy, and let's make money at that. Right. And ultimately, I think along the way of achieving that goal, you might have to do things that may not bring you joy, but will bring you income while you're trying to achieve that growth. So I know for a fact when I was getting into voiceover, and I went full time, and I think I really speak to the people who are like, they're part-time, maybe considering full-time, or they're part-time considering dedicating more time to it that maybe they don't have, and they've got a full-time job and they really hate their full-time job and they don't ever want to do anything like it again. Well, I'll tell you what, those skills are what you have in order to ultimately, right, possibly bring income in on a steady basis. So there might be an interim time where you might have to do consulting in something that you're really good at, right? That can maybe help people so that you can bring in enough money to continually like reinvest that money into the growth of your career. And so I wanted to just say it may not be immediate gratification like the society I think is these days. Like I know myself, like I want it right away. I'm impatient, but I do believe that stepping those steps to success and financially. And when we talk financially, we talk investing your money, having the money to invest, as well as your time, which it ends up turning into being money for you.
Oh, for sure. I always think that you need to follow the dollars and do whatever you can to get to your next dollar in business. And if that is education, then follow that. If that is consulting so that you can have additional money coming in so that you can use that to channel into your business, then do it. Like, figure out how you can bring in resources and revenue so that you can use that to then grow your business. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is totally okay to have your side hustle be what can fund your main hustle.
Be an
until,
Uber driver.
It's time.
Yeah.
Like you that's totally fine, because there's no glory in that being a starving artist. I really don't think that that's the way that is going to be a long-term measurement of success, for you to sort of take away from your current in the hopes of a possibility of a future, when you could be doing things along the way to help like infuse capital into your life and your business to help keep you going for longer.
And absolutely. I mean, it's when you've got, a family that might depend on that income, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes more than just, it really depends on where you're at in your life and, who's depending on income coming in to pay a mortgage or to support a family. And so in reality, I'm always, when my students are asking me, should I go full-time into voiceover, and they have a family and children, I'm like, well, you've got to really think about this, because you need to be able to secure steady income coming in to be able to support. And it's wonderful, and I get it. I mean, I think we all get to this point or a lot of us get to this point when we've been in a corporate job for a long time, and it becomes toxic. We hate it, and we're like, we just want to do what we love full time. Well, that may not be achievable within just a day, obviously, or even a week, or even a year, because as I mentioned before, it took me a good I'm going to say maybe 8 years before I really got a return on my investment when I went full time. And so make sure you have that financial cushion to be able to support whatever it is that you need to support yourself, other family members. And it doesn't matter if you're an Uber driver, or maybe you're taking the skills that you have, during your day job and creating a side hustle business out of that in order to make the extra income. And it really is like, I always try to say, well, let's make my side hustle something I love to do. Doesn't necessarily have to be voiceover.
Right.
And so, I love podcasting. So I'm looking to expand my podcasting consulting, that kind of a thing. So how can I do that effectively, right? How can I get the message out? And gosh, Danielle, after I figure out like how I want to grow, guess what comes next? I've got to market myself.
Yeah. And there's probably going to be more sacrifice in order to get to where you're going. And also the sacrifice is looking at what is and figuring out what is or isn't working. So you're looking at your business, the landscape of your business now, and voiceover is working. The other things that you're doing are working. The podcasting is working. And so you're thinking, all right, well, all of these things are working. What else can I do, and how else can I build it? And that's great. But if something's not working, then you really should look at that and say, all right, well, do I need to keep going down this path that isn't working? Maybe it is keeping a day job that you don't love and don't feel fulfilled with, but maybe you still need to be bringing in an income because you got people to support and yourself to support.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just finding a different job that can help bring in income while you're working toward growing your voiceover business. Maybe there are certain genres that you really like, but you're not making a lot of money in. And so maybe it's looking at, all right, I do enjoy this particular genre, but I'm making a ton more money in a different genre. Let me keep cultivating that, but have the passion working in this genre that I love that maybe isn't paying as much. Like those kinds of hard questions are really the sacrifices I think that, we're talking about here. Not necessarily just financial, but understanding that to get to the level of success that you're wanting to get, whatever your measure of success is, looking at the decisions that need to be made and making the hard choices and making those sacrifices, be it financial or otherwise, to then get you to where you're trying to go and your version of success.
I love how you brought up the different genres too, because, it's something else to look at when you're doing a genre. There's so many people that want to do, let's say, character voices or animation or, promo. And, it's something to be said that, while you're working toward that goal, right, you can also financially invest yourself and your time into other genres that can be bringing you money in. While that happens. And of course, that happens to be one of my specialties, happens to be the corporate market. And I'm always trying to explain to people that it may not be the most glamorous and it may not be the one that brings you the most joy. However, when you talk about market share you've literally got so many opportunities for corporate narration compared to maybe, let's say, animation, because there's only so many animated shows out there. Right. However, there's 30, and I upped my number. I've now researched, and my number is now 33.2 million registered companies. It used to be 30.4. Now it's 33.2 million companies that are registered with the SBA in the United States. And so that's just a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential opportunities, because you've got those companies that probably have a website and they probably have a YouTube channel and they need a voice at one point or another to be able to talk about those products and services.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because there's part of this industry that can be purely just economics and can just purely be about what pays the bills. And then there's other parts of it as actors, as artists, that it's what fills our souls.
Sure.
And maybe those two things financially don't necessarily align, but figuring out what it is that you can do that pays the bills and also fills your soul. And it may not be the same thing, but how can you put your time and your energy and your efforts into creating as much money and fulfillment as possible in your day, in your life, in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny because I'm always like with corporate narration, people just think it's so boring. And a lot of people just think it's so boring. And I'm like, wow, I completely don't think that, because to me, it's just challenging. It's challenging to be able to find the story in some of the corporate copy. It's not that it's necessarily, to me, boring, but I love the challenge as an artist. I love the challenge of where is the story here and how can I tell it in the most interesting way? Yeah. And, also just, again, looking at the absolute size of the market that is out there. And, again, also understanding and keeping my eye on all sorts of other things happening in the industry. And so while I have my eye on that, making sure that if I love being an entrepreneur and I love being a boss, how am I going to continue to bring in money when, let's say, maybe times are slow in the industry? Like there are also slow points in the, in the marketplace. Right now, certain genres I think are busier than ever, like political, of course, political. And of course, anybody that's doing commercials for the holidays, right? I mean, they've been busy, but maybe, during the holidays, there's certain other genres that aren't as busy, right? Maybe corporate narration isn't quite as busy. Maybe e-learning is not quite as busy during that time. Yeah. But, understanding the fluctuations in the market, and when those happen for you, having, I have the genre, I always want to do character work, and so I'm continually working towards that. But to supplement my financial income, I'm going to do some corporate, or I'm going to do some e-learning, or I'm going to do some telephony, whatever that is. And then understanding where the fluctuations are in the marketplace. And so if there is just no work coming in, then invest your time in your, in figuring out how you're going to grow that business. And again, which translates to your time is money.
Yeah. And that is the measure of entrepreneurship. That is the measure of being the VO boss. That's what it means to look at, okay, what's going on in the industry? What's going on with the things that I do well, or genres that I would like to do well in, and how can I maneuver myself to be able to take advantage of all of it, maybe not at the same time, but be able to move laterally into and out of genres when they're at their high points, or when, maybe moving out of something if there's a strike, for example, that's happening right now, or figuring out like what's going on in the market and how you can maneuver your business to be the best positioned that it possibly can be. Like that's the name of the game. It's not just about what you do and how you show up in front of your mic. It's really about figuring out how you can position your business to win, no matter what the circumstances are.
Absolutely. And, as much as they say this is not a competitive industry because every voice is unique, in reality, I'm competing against myself so that I can, continually progress forward and win. I love it that you said win, because, Danielle, I'm not competitive at all.
Right. Me either. I'm not competitive at all.
Not at all. But yeah, no. But really, yeah. How can you win? How can you win? And like you were mentioning earlier, like, what is your definition of success? Right. And what, because there are some people that, maybe financial is not necessarily the definition of success. But and I know that we're going to actually have an episode coming up on like determining what is your hourly rate? Like, what is your hourly worth? Right. When in trying to determine what's working and what's not, how are you determining, okay, I'm spending an hour learning this, and what is that time worth versus if I get a commercial, I can make this amount of money. How does that translate into my hourly rate? If I do a corporate narration and I get paid once, how does that translate? So you can kind of decide how you can move forward in your business and what you should work on, maybe what you should focus on, or what goals you can set for the next level.
For sure. Yeah. I love that. I think that then that also brings a lot of ability to the individual voice actor to be the person who is choosing what winning and success looks like. And it's got nothing to do with what you're seeing in these Facebook groups or how other people are running their business. It's got everything to do with what you have chosen, what you've decided, and it gives you something to do. I feel like sometimes it feels like so many things are out of your control when it comes to running a business, when it comes to being a VO boss. It really is like, okay, well, I did this audition. Did someone choose it or not? Have I been chosen? Are all these people, the gatekeepers out there, is it working in my favor or not? But when you have something that you personally can do and you can take ownership of how you are running your business, it's empowering. And really what you were just talking about is the individual business owner and entrepreneur and VO boss being able to empower themselves and choose what is your definition of success and what can you do to make sure that you get there. And then it's got nothing to do with anyone else choosing you or not choosing you. It's got everything to do with what you've done to make yourself the most successful that you can possibly be.
I love that. I feel like that could be a completely separate episode too, talking about what is it that you own, right? What is it that you own? There are things that we don't control, like, do we get picked? Do I get feedback? And all of that stuff is just that's the stuff I think a lot of voice actors get preoccupied with. Like, oh, okay, so why am I not getting picked? Or how did, I auditioned, but I don't know, I never hear back. And so they spend all their time worrying about that. But I think what you said is just absolutely on point. Like, what is it that you can do to control, right? That you take control of what it is that you can control. And that's gonna be what moves you forward. And that's what's gonna keep you, I'm gonna say, out of the mindset of self-sabotage or imposter syndrome. And so I can't control whether somebody picks me or not necessarily for my audition, because there are so many elements that aren't in my control. But I can control my performance clients. I can control how good I am, right? I can control, getting coaching if I need more. I can control, I can control marketing in my business, right? I can control researching what's happening, what trends are happening now. So those are things I can do.
Quality. You can control how much money you're saving and reinvesting in your business. You can control who you work with. Like you can say no to working with certain clients and certain jobs if it doesn't serve you, or the rate doesn't serve you, or the subject matter does not serve you. There are so many things that are in your control, that owning that and really living in the piece of the ownership of that really can be what helps you feel like you're actually doing a little bit more every single day to be the VO boss that you ultimately want to be.
Yeah. And your mention of how empowering that is. I mean, that is so empowering. I mean, I know that me, the control freak, maybe that's why I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have no idea, because I can control that. I can control the education. I can control the direction that I'm moving. And if it's not necessarily moving the way I want it to or expect it to, I can move it again, and I can change it again. And so that keeps me, the control freak, which, it can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. But I think for me, I utilize that personality trait that I have of always wanting to have control in a positive way to help me grow. Yeah. And then still understanding that, I have these things under my control, and then understanding almost more importantly what it is that is not under my control, and not allowing that to affect me in any way in terms of like my mental state.
Yeah. For sure.
Wow. What a great conversation. So yeah, guys, no sacrifice, no success. I'm a big believer in, really taking the ownership, making the sacrifices that you need. And that sacrifice doesn't necessarily need to be money. It could be your time, your dedication, your effort, your spirit, right? All of that. Whatever it takes, that kind of, go get 'em sort of, VO boss attitude that just goes for it, and just tries things. If it doesn't work, try it another way, right? And really tries not to allow any of that to get in the way, or even yourself to get in the way.
For sure.
So,
yeah, I love it.
Danielle, I love it. Great conversation. I'm going to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can connect and network like bosses. Find out more at ipdtl.com. And guys, you have an amazing week. Go out there and make those sacrifices, because we know you guys are going to be great successes.
Absolutely.
So have a good one, guys, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
Bye.